Welcome, Guardsmen. Congratulations on surviving the first 15 hours of joining the Guard. Hooray! Of course, I, as a commissar, was not worried in the least. Wait. It seems I'm receiving a Vox transmission. Vraks. But that's where the Death Korps of Krieg are. Let's try to survive more than 15 hours. I'm a commissar. Of course I will. But they fragged our commissars. Well, I'm just gonna have to improvise, adapt, overcome. Day 1. I have successfully infiltrated and blended in with the Krieg Regiment. They ask no questions. Or maybe they did. I cannot understand a word they are saying. Day 25. I now understand the Gasmask language. They still do not suspect I am not from Krieg. Day 129. They have accepted me as one of their own. I have received the respect of the commanding officers for destroying a super heavy tank with a shovel. They do not need to know that I didn't actually hit it, and it just kind of blew up on its own. Day 200. I have become the Kriegsman. It's a way of life. Today, we are getting fresh recruits, and you will be one of them. Step 1, we're going to use Eshin Gray to base the overcoat as well as the pants. Step 2, we are going to base the armor and Death Korps strap as well as the gun. This includes the plate armor on the shoulders, the helmet, the little plate armor on the hand, as well as the gun. Step 3, we're going to base the gas mask in Administratum Gray. This will be easier to go on if you just slightly water it down. Step 4, we are going to base all the leather in Dryad bark. That includes a little rebreather unit on the chest, as well as the backpack, the straps, the leather on the hands, as well as the boots. Step 5, we're going to use Ushabti Bone to base the puttee, which is those little coverings along the leg, as well as the bedroll in the back. We're going to use Abaddon Black for the gas mask hose. Next, we're going to want to use Iron Warriors to base all the metal parts. This includes the connection pieces on the gas mask with the hose. And if you want, you can also do around the eyes as well. You're also going to want to do the little unit on that little rebreather that's in the little middle. I also did the power sword, just using the end of my brush and making sure I hit all those edges. And that little ventilation casing on the plasma pistol, I also did that in the Iron Warriors, and a little fuel cell on the bottom. We're going to use Balthazar Gold, and we're going to want to paint the emblems in it. It's easy, just make sure if the tip of your brush has paint and that it's slightly watered down so it goes easy and smooth on. I also did it on the handguard on the power sword. For the eyes, I decided to use Mint Beast and Red, and it's gonna help if it's just slightly watered down so it's easier to just glide on. Now it's time for my favorite part. We're gonna wash the entire model in Vraks Earthshade. Now, if it builds up too much in a certain area, you're just going to use a dry brush and just soak up some of that paint so it's not too heavy. And if you want it to be even darker than the first wash, once it dries, you can always add another wash after that. Now it's time for highlights. We're going to want to use Mechanicum Standard Gray, which is slightly lighter than Eshin Gray. We're going to want to do major areas of highlights. So on the back of the cloak, just large areas sticking out, the knees, creases, tops of the arms, anywhere where you want it to be just a little bit brighter, that's where we're going to put this. We're going to want the paint to be slightly watered down, and we don't want too much paint on the brush. For areas like the knees, that is kind of larger without any creases, we're just going to want to tap it in. We want to build highlights versus just putting the whole coat over it. We're going to use Dawnstone Gray for the brightest of highlights. We're going to want to water it down slightly until it's like an ink-like substance that you see on the plate. We're going to want to focus on creases and just the most protruding areas. We don't want to do the entire crease, but just a little bit to make it a little bit brighter. Now for larger areas that you still want to be brighter than the Mechanicum Standard Gray that we did before, we're just going to want to stipple it in like on the knees or on the top of the arms where the sun would hit it. I unfortunately do not have a color that would go well for the highlights on the armor, but we improvise, adapt, overcome. So I mixed Death Corpse Drab with Striking Green in equal parts. And we're gonna do little highlights along the edges. Now I don't like clean highlights, I prefer just stippling in along the edges so that it's not even, and it kind of just gives it more kind of the scratches and chip look. Next, we're gonna slightly water down the paint so we can do scratches. I had to go towards the middle and then pull away towards the end of the armor like you see on the shoulders. So you go towards and then pull away, towards, pull away, and this will give nice little scratches towards the end of the armor plates. I did the exact same thing for the plasma pistol, just stippling in around those little edges and adding light scratches on the plasma pistol. And then on the helmet itself, I mostly just stippled around the face on the helmet and purposely leaving some of the areas darker to just give it a little bit more contrast. And then in some of those darker areas, I would just add a little bit of light scratches throughout. For highlights on the leather, we're going to use Steel Legion Drab. We're we're going to roughly hit all of the edges on the leather. Next, we're going to add lots of little light scratches throughout the leather as well. Now for the straps, I just focused along the edges and just put little light scratches down in the middle. And I didn't show it, but for the boots, you're just going to want to dry brush it slightly to hit those brighter areas on the boots, like on the front or the heel, and then just add light scratches in some of those darker areas. We're going to use a bright gold for the highlights on the emblem and the handguard on the power sword. We want to leave the recesses alone on the emblem and just kind of highlight those top areas where the sun would hit it. This will help give it a little bit more depth and not just one color. For the handguard, I didn't paint the entire handguard. I painted a little bit at the front, a little bit in the middle, and just a little bit at the end. This way it just kind of gives it a little bit more contrast and not just all the same color on the handguard. Next, we're going to want to use a bright silver like Storm Hose Silver. And we're going to want to hit all those little buttons along the coat, those connector pieces that connects the hose to the gas mask. And I just kind of tap it in to hit some of those areas. Next, we're going to want to do the power sword. And I use the very end of my brush to hit along all of those edges on the sword. I also added just very light scratches throughout with slightly watered down paint. Next, we're going to want to do the plasma pistol. Now on that ventilation casing, we're just going to want to hit the edges and the corners with the side of the brush. You're also going to want to do highlights on that little fuel cell on the bottom. Now for the eyes, we're going to want to use a bright red, and if you don't have a bright red like Evil Sun Scarlet, just mix in some orange like Trollslayer Orange with your Mephiston Red to make it brighter. Now if this was the eye, we want to leave the top part alone and make it dark, leave the bottom part alone and leave it dark, and just put a little highlight right here in the eye, leaving this part dark. And we want it to be exactly the same on the other eye. So if you highlight here in the eye, leaving the edges alone, we're going to do a little highlight right here, leaving the edges alone and part of the eye. To create the appearance of dirt on the mini, we're going to start off with the medium. We're just going to add a little bit on a plate. Next, we're going to want to use a pigment powder. I use the Vallejo Burnt Umber and want to keep adding that pigment powder until it becomes this thick, chalky substance. And as you can see, we don't want too much of a streak from the paintbrush on that plate. Next, you can see on a paper towel, barely any paint is coming off my brush. We're going to start halfway on the overcoat and paint down. We're going to paint up and then down. We want it to be heavier towards the bottom to repeatedly go over and over and just make it heavier along the bottom of the coat. I also did this around the feet and a little bit up the leg and just a little on the knee. I also did it behind the legs on that coat as well. Day 201. I have been reassigned. Oh, thank the Emperor. And if you want even more content, check out my gaming channel at NUKA Gaming.